Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started then. I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to come to the Metastock webinar today. I did a few polls at the beginning, and I see that we have a few customers, a few people who don't have Metastock. So today what I'm going to be doing is giving you an overview of Metastock, how Metastock works, and what it's designed to do. We will be talking about trading strategies and how you can develop trading strategies as part of the webinar. Now, my name's Clement. I'm the Director of Sales here at Metastock. I've been with Metastock for about 13 years now. So I'm very familiar with the software and the way that the software works. So during the presentation, if you have questions about the way that anything works or you would like to see something specific, don't hesitate to ask now. But if it takes us too far off the path, I may come back to the question later. So be aware of that as well. But feel free to ask questions. That's why you're here, is you're here to learn and understand what the software does. So let's definitely take that approach to it. So today I'll be talking about using Metastock to find the right strategy for you. What works, what doesn't. So in the world of trading, everything trades a little bit differently, and we all know that. So we're going to talk about ways to identify the right strategy for the right stock, the currency pair, anything that you're trading. So if you have specific questions about that, go ahead and ask them during the presentation, but let's go ahead and get started. So if you've been to a Metastock webinar before, you know that we do have to read this disclaimer very quickly, and I apologize for this, but let's go ahead and get this started. This demonstration is designed to instruct you on using Metastock and accompanying software plugins and is not a recommendation to buy or sell, but rather guidelines to interpreting and using the specific indicators and features within the software. The information, software, and techniques presented today should only be used by investors who are aware of the risk inherent in trading. Metastock shall have no liability for any investment decisions based on the use of their software, any trading strategies, or any information provided in connection with the company. And really what we're saying there, and I think we all know this, is that there's risk in the market. So if we don't know that there's risk in the market, it's a lesson that comes very fast to those who don't know it. But it is something that we all know and understand. But we're just saying I'm here to show you how to use the software and ways that you can use the software and not giving you trading recommendations. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with Metastock, let me just give you a quick overview of who Metastock is. Metastock goes back to 1982. We were founded by a gentleman named Steve Akalis. And Steve Akalis actually developed Metastock so he could help his dad do charting because he was watching him every day hand draw charts and put in data every day onto a chart by hand. And as you can imagine, that was quite tedious. So Steve sat down in DOS and developed, actually it first developed on the Apple, developed it, and then it moved to DOS later. And that took us on our path of developing Metastock software. We were purchased by Reuters in 1995 so we could actually help develop charting and tools for the institutional market space. It was someplace that Reuters was weak and needed help with, and we were the top tier analytics for them for quite some time and still are providing top tier analytics to their individual retail banks and institutions. So that went on. Eventually, we were able to release some Reuters real-time data to our customers. We released a product called Quote Center and then later Metastock Zenith. And over time, we've sold 309,000 Metastock units. And then about a year and a half ago, we actually divested from Thomson Reuters and actually became our own company. And you're actually seeing a lot of new and innovative features coming out of Metastock now that we've divested from Thomson Reuters and our own company. So I'll be showing you some of those features as we go through the presentation today. And kind of the last slide that I'll be in here for a while, and then we're going to spend a lot of time in the software, is if you're familiar with this magazine, it's Technical Analysis of Stocks and Commodities magazine. It's a great magazine for understanding the markets and technical analysis. And what they do is every year they do awards based off of what their readers say. So we've actually won their Reader's Choice Award for our end-of-day software for the last 23 years straight. And that's something that we're very proud of here at Metastock because it is quite an accomplishment to win something for 23 years in a row, especially when it's the readers of a magazine. It's not the advertising dollars. It's not that. It's actually what the readers say. And then our Metastock Professional, which is our real-time software, has won their award for 10 years. So really our products are very award-winning, very well known in the industry. So as we go through this, you'll see why we win that award on a regular basis. So let's go ahead and go into Metastock here. Now, for those of you who have Metastock, you may have a previous version to version 13. That's where we are right now. Or you may not have Metastock. So I'm going to try and cover Metastock in a way that kind of gives you an overview for both. If you have it, maybe you'll learn some things that you didn't know about it and kind of take that approach to it. So in Metastock 13, where we actually start is in what's called the Power Console. Now, if you're in your screen, up at the very top of your screen, there's a little 4 arrows pointing out in corners that you can actually choose to go full screen if you'd like to, which may help you view the presentation a little more clearly. And then you can minimize back so you can ask questions if you need to. So in the Power Console, first of all, what happens when you walk in, you see that there's quite a list of different global exchanges here. So if you're looking at a lot of different global exchanges, you can see the power of what our data offers. We offer a lot of global data. Now, most of you aren't looking at maybe the Ho Chi Minh Stock Exchange, or you're not looking at Singapore, or maybe you're just trading Canada, or maybe you're just trading Saudi Arabia. So what you can do is you can actually come in and customize your list here for what you want to see. Okay, so that's simply done here by clicking the Manage Lists and going to Public Lists. And this screen will pop up. So you can customize your view of what you'd like to see. So I'm just going to quickly grab North America here. So I'm just going to grab North America, and I'll add that in over there. And then I'll also come down and just put in some index constituents, things like the S&P 100, 400, 500, 600. I'll add those in. And then I'll also put in the NASDAQ 100 and the Dow 30. Now, there's other lists in here that you can put in, sector and industry groups. You can see that those are all available here, Forex, futures. Whatever it is you're trading, customize it to your view. But we'll just use this as a quick example here. So let's just change this, and then we've got it set up. Okay, so now when I come back into the Power Console, I just have the list that I want to see rather than the whole world. So now I can just use what I'm doing. Let's actually just start by opening up a chart. So if I don't have a chart open, I'm in the Power Console, I can open up a chart one of 2 ways. Well, one, if I know the symbol, so let's say I was looking at Microsoft and I know that symbol, I can just type it in. If I don't know that symbol, there's a symbol lookup function right here where I can come in and type in Microsoft, and it will bring up everything that relates to Microsoft for me. Okay. One other way I can find a symbol is I can come down into lists. So if I clicked on index constituents here, I can come in and I can see the whole list of everything that's in there. So if I know it's in the NASDAQ 100, I can come down, find Microsoft, there it is, and I can just check it to open it. So those are my ways of finding charts that I want to open. So let's go ahead and click Next. And then this screen here actually asks me how much data I want to load up, what kind of time frames I want to look at. So here, load default records. What that'll do is it'll load about, if I'm looking at a daily chart, it'll load about 5 years worth of records, and then zoom in on the last 250 bars. And I can change that if I want to. Or I can load up as much data as available. So if you want to see every bit of data available, you can choose Load Maximum Records. We can set specific dates. Here, under interval, we can set what time frame. So if you want a 1 minute, 5 minute, 30 minute, daily. Now, it depends on the version of Metastock you're using, what you'll see here. If you're using Metastock End of Day, you'll see daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly. If you're using Metastock Pro, as I am, you'll see all these options here. Okay, so let's just go ahead and open up a daily chart. And we'll leave everything else the same and kind of get into the rest later. So let's go ahead and open up our chart. Okay, so now I have Microsoft open. And once a chart opens, you actually see a lot of different things show up on the chart. So over here, we have our different trend lines and drawing tools, things that we can do. So if you wanted to put in a trend line, we could put in a trend line. If you wanted to make notes on your chart, we could come in and say, bought here, okay, and then sold here. Because I know that's what everybody does. We all buy low and we sell high. So we're making perfect trades, right? So that's the way I like to do it. So then we go through and we can do other things on our charts. If we want to do things like Fibonacci's and things like that, we can drop those lines on our chart. Okay, so we can make a lot of changes on our chart. Now, one thing that's great about Metastock is if I go in here and I just close that Microsoft chart, and then I come back into it, I can just bring that chart up again. Turn off my caps lock there. Okay, so if I just open it up again, Metastock's going to remember everything that I did on that chart without saving it. And that's a feature we call smart charts in Metastock. So it'll always remember what you are working with to make your life a little bit easier. Okay, so let's go ahead and take all this off and delete all. Okay, so now we've got a clean chart that we're working with here. Now, a few things just about charting and what you can do in Metastock, and then we'll get into how to develop a workflow and actually use Metastock to identify trades, because that's really what we're all after. Is inside Metastock, you can come in here, and there's 9 different styles of charting, so you can go through all the different styles of charting here. Okay, most people use bar, candlestick, or line. Those are kind of the 3 common, but there are 9 different styles here. Inside Metastock, there's over 200 technical indicators. Now, are you going to be using 200 different technical indicators? Well, probably not. Okay, the point of having over 200 indicators inside the software is if there's something that you're looking for, odds are it's probably going to be built inside the software. And that's kind of the advantage of that. If it's not in there, Metastock has a great and rich formula language where you can actually develop your own. So you can actually build your own indicators and strategies if you want to. Okay, so that's some of the features that we can do in Metastock. Okay, so let's actually take the approach of finding some trades here. That's what we're here to learn about and talk about. So there's a few different ways that we can do it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use as an example the MACD indicator. Now, a lot of people are familiar with the MACD. I'm just going to grab it and drag it here and point it to the top of the screen, and it'll put it in a new window so that I can analyze it. Okay, so the MACD, what it's looking for is it's looking for a crossing of the signal line. So if I see a crossing above the dotted line, it's triggering an entry into the trade form. If I see a crossing below the dotted line, I'm getting an exit signal. Okay, so now if you don't or you're not familiar with an indicator or how to use an indicator, one of the things that you can do is you can actually right-click on it. And this is true for just about everything in Metastock. Right-click, go to Help, and it will give you an overview of how to use the indicator and what the indicator is designed to do. So this gives me an overview, walks me through it. It walks me through interpretation, so I can see, okay, the basic MACD trading rule is to sell when the MACD falls below its 9-period signal line, which is what we're doing here. We're looking for it to fall below, or we're looking for it to cross above. Okay, a buy signal occurs when the MACD rises above its signal line. Okay, so that it'll kind of walk me through there, give me the math on how it's created, and show me all the different parameters for it. Okay, now that's great for some people. A lot of us do learn by reading and understanding what's going on, but a great tool within Metastock is one that we call the Expert Advisor. The Expert Advisor can actually help us understand what's happening and visually understand what's happening with that indicator. So we're going to go to the Expert, find the MACD Expert, choose Attach, and then close this window. And now you'll see these buy and sell signals appear on the chart. So I'm just going to zoom in down here with the plus sign so you can see a little more clearly. So here, as we talked about, you'll see that buy signal based off of the crossing of the line. Well, now why does it happen on the next bar? Well, that's because it's waiting for the close of bar to generate that signal. So that's why we get that signal right here. Okay, here we get that sell signal right there, buy signal, sell signal. So we can use this to help us understand what the indicator is doing. We've also put together a great feature in here called the Expert Commentary. So if I right-click on the chart and go to Expert Commentary, drag it onto this window, what the Expert Commentary will do is it'll actually walk us through that trade. So where are we right now? We're about 4 bars after the buy signal, or excuse me, the sell signal. So I can take that as a short, or if I'm in a long trade, I definitely get out of that. So what we can do here is we can see the current statistics, we can see where the MACD is, and then it tells me a little bit more about the MACD. Well, the MACD can provide buy and sell indications in 3 ways. Signal line crossovers, which is what we've been talking about, overbought or oversold, and divergences. So if you didn't know that about the MACD, suddenly you've realized something else and what it can give you. So then it'll walk you through those three different scenarios. So currently the MACD is bearish since it's trading below its signal line. The MACD crossed below its signal line 3 periods ago. So if we go back 3 bars, there we go. Since the MACD has crossed its signal line, the price has decreased 1.18% and has a range from 47.44 to 45.88. Okay, so it's going to guide me in what I should be doing here as it moves from signal to signal. Now, right now, I don't have any overbought or oversold conditions. If I did, if I scroll back in this chart, the way that you'll usually see that on a chart, and let's see if there are any here, is you'll see the bars painted a different color. So there's a good indication of that right here. See how the bars have changed from black to red? That means that there's a different condition happening here. Now I can go back with the expert advisor and see what that actually was. So right here, now I'm talking about this bar, not the current bar. The MACD is in an overbought range. Prices may continue to move higher for some time. Wait for prices to move lower before considering any short positions. Well, this was actually the end of the overbought. So if we were at the beginning of it, this is the beginning of that overbought range. And you can see that prices did continue to move higher for quite a period before pulling back. So this would be a good scenario to watch for that overbought range. Boris, if your sound is going in and out, what you may want to do is just go up to the top, go to meeting, and then do the audio setup wizard, and that should fix it. And SA, if you're having that echo sound, that would fix that as well. You may need to exit out and come back in after that to fix that. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back here. So we've kind of seen what the expert advisor can do, but one of the problems we identify as traders is identifying trading opportunities. Okay, there's 10,000 different stocks out there. How do I find a trading opportunity? So let's actually start there in identifying our trading opportunities. So what we can do is go to the Explorer. So if the Power Console is open, you just click on the Explorer tab. If it's not, just click on the Explorer right here and it'll take you right to that. So here in the Explorer, we have a number of different strategies pre-built in for you. You can also identify your own and create your own strategies if you want to scan the market. But what we're going to do here is we're going to look for a MACD buy or sell signal. So this will look for both at the same time. So I'm just going to highlight that, go to next, and then I need to tell it a list to look through. Let's maybe have it look through the NASDAQ 100. So this will look through the NASDAQ 100 to identify opportunities for me. So let's go ahead and choose next. Now here under data loading, for this one, we're just going to load minimum records. We're going to use the current time, and we're just going to head and start our exploration. Now what you'll see in this scan here is it'll go through and tell you what it's rejecting. So about 90% don't have any kind of signal today at all, because all we want to see is what's happening today. So let's go ahead and choose reports. And what we can see here is if I click on any of these columns, I can rank on them. So what we see is buy, sell, overbought for OB, and OS is oversold. So I've got 4 different columns here. Now the only one that has results, which are denoted by this 1, is a short signal. So we've got a few short signals, which isn't surprising considering what the market's been doing the last few days. So what we can do is we could open up any of these stocks. Let's just open up Amazon here as an example. So if I were to come in and put the MACD on my chart, I could see that there it is. It's crossing below its signal line right now, so that's generating the sell signal. But my question is, if I go back to the Explorer and click on Report, this is going to show me that same report that I was just seeing, is which of these is actually a valid sell signal, okay, or a short signal. So what I can do here now is, instead of going through and looking at each of these charts individually and trying to determine which one would be the right one to take, I can go into another tool that we have called the System Tester. So the System Tester is an awesome tool because what it does is it lets me see if the personality of the stock matches the personality of the system. As we know, there's a lot of different types of indicators out there. We have trending indicators, we have oscillating indicators, and the question is the stock oscillating or is it trending? Does it work well with the MACD or does it not? So that's what we're going to try and find out with the system tester. So the system tester allows us to take that strategy against that list of stocks and see which one has performed best historically. Well, there's pros and cons to that. One, it gives us a good idea if it's worked well historically, and we can see that historical relevance. The downside to it is historical. It's what's happened in the past. So we've kind of got both sides of that. Now, we're not trying to say perfectly that this has worked well historically, so it's going to work in the future. We're trying to say, well, if it has worked well in the past, my odds are is that it's going to work well in the future. And that's what we're trying to determine here. So let's take a look at that, and it'll become a little more clear as we go through the test. Okay, so what I can do is I want to look at the results of the last exploration. So I'm just going to check this box here and select all. So we're going to test the MACD against this list of stocks. Go to next. And now the system tester really starts to ask us, how do you trade? What are you after? So you can say, I'm only doing long trades, I'm only doing short trades, or I'm doing both. Well, now all the signals that we received were short. They were all sell signals. So we can say we can go short or we can do both. So we can do either one of those. So let's actually just do short trades. Since we have all short trades, let's look at that. Okay, so we have the last 250 records here. So what you're going to see is about the last year if we're testing on a daily chart. There's about 250 trading days in a year. So we could extend that out if we wanted to do the last 2 years. Let's maybe take a bigger picture of it. So let's do the last 2 years. Okay, interval, let's do it daily. That's the time frame of the short signal we have. Now let's go into trade options. Trade options is important because what it's asking you is, what do you have in your account? What's your risk tolerance, and what are you doing? So let's cover that here. First of all, if you're trading futures or Forex, you'd want to do a points only test. If you're trading equities, you can come in here and do an equity test. So now you can say, I have $10,000 in my trading account, I have $100,000, whatever that is, put that in there. Okay, so then what I like to use is you can say only trade X number of units. So if you only trade 100 units, or if you trade 1,000 or 10,000, whatever it is, you can set that specifically here. What I prefer to use is percent of available equity. And what percentage of available equity is if I say, well, I have 100,000 in my account, but I'm only willing to risk 25% of that in any given trade, or 5%, or whatever your risk tolerance is for your account, because we're not putting all of our money into every trade. We're saying, okay, I'm only going to take this much and risk it. So if I put 100,000 and I'm willing to risk 25%, I'm putting in 25,000. If my net equity goes up to 200,000 and I'm still risking 25%, that amount will move up into 50,000 in a trade. So it'll work with my money as it goes up, if that makes sense. Okay, now we can go to the broker tab here. We can see here what we can put in if you're trading on margin, your margin percentage. Here under money market, if you're making money on a money market when you're out of a trade, you can put that in here. Now, most of us aren't making money in a money market right now, so we'll just set that to 0. Have our margin requirements here. And then here you can put in what it costs you to actually trade, because that's a real cost of the trading. So what we want to do is put in a commission amount. So we're going to say 5 points in, so $5 in, $5 out. Okay, you can put in if it's $7 in, $7 out, $20 in, $20 out, whatever your trading is, because that will make a difference on it. Trade execution. So this is the last tab we'll cover here. But what trade execution does is it basically says, how do you want the system to trade for you? And the best thing to do, in my recommendation, is to really leave this alone until you get really advanced with it. But what realistic market prices is, let's say I get a short signal today. Well, when am I really getting into that trade? Well, I usually wait for the close of the bar, so I'm not getting into that trade until the next trading day. And that's what realistic market prices does. It waits for that next day. You can also come in here and account for points or slippage. So you could say if I'm accounting for 1% slippage when I'm getting into a trade, you can set that here as well. But I would just leave that as a default for now until you become more advanced in the system tester. Okay, so let's go ahead and now run our test. Let's see what happens here. So we're running short trades only on that list of stocks that we got from our scan. So let's go ahead and start our system test, and you'll see it run our test down here. It's trying to find which one of those performed the best. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and maximize this so you can see it a little more clearly. And what you actually start to see very quickly is that some of these work and some of these don't. Because what I have is a graphical representation of my net profit over time trading these stocks using the MACD over the last 2 years. Now again, this is doing shorts only, which is the current trade I'm trying to look at. So I can come in here and rank any of these based off any of these categories. So we're going to rank on percent gain. I can rank on net profit, percent gain, number of trades, trade profit loss, and average profit, average loss. Okay, so let's review this here and show you what we're looking at. So Citrix Systems here is my top performing one. Over that time, I had a net profit of $18,575 or an 18% gain. That was 31 trades. Now, if I look at this category right here, 17 of those trades were winners, 14 were losers. So it's almost 40% losers. So you think, well, why isn't my loss bigger? Well, the reason for that is because it tells me my winning trades were probably pretty good and my losing trades were actually pretty small. Okay, so that's a way that we can use that number there. So if you're looking at number of trades, you want to see if that fits your trading personality as well. Okay, so let's actually drill in here and get a little bit more detail. So we're looking at Citrix Systems again. I'm just going to double click on this. And what this window does is it gives me an overview of my trade accounting and what happened with it over time. So the first thing I see here is performance. So my profit, again, $18,575, 18%. So that's about 9% year trading this. If I would have bought and held this stock over the same period, I would have lost about $3,500, which would have been about a 4% loss. So my trade summary had 31 trades, a 2.2% trade efficiency. Now on profitable trades, this is really good to look at here. So we had 17 winning trades. Those were all short trades because that's all we tested. My average profit was about $2,000 per trade. My highest profit was $10,000 and lowest profit was about $30 there. Most consecutive winning trades in a row was 5. Unprofitable trades. So this is where we can kind of compare and contrast against the two. So I had 14 losing trades. Average loss was $1,100. Highest loss was about $2,000. Okay, so now one thing to consider here is I did not say when to. I only said to buy, to short when it says short, and exit when it says to exit. I didn't have any stops in here. This is only saying sell when it says go short when it says to go short, and getting out when it says to get out. So if you're trading with stops, that might change your results. So what you can do, and I'm not going to get into it in this webinar, but you can actually go in and set stops and actually set those so you can actually test that as part of your realistic trading scenarios. Okay, so realize that as part of this that we're going through. Okay, over here, accounting initial equity was 100,000. So trading profit was about 35,000, trade loss about 16,000. We paid about $310 in commission over that time. So my final equity was 118,000 over that period. Now, again, this is a historical view of it, but if I understand that it worked well over time, trade moving forward. Okay, so if that doesn't make sense, please let me know. But now, the other tabs up here, the orders, this will actually show you all the different orders were placed, when they were placed, when it got in, when it got out. Okay, position excursions, this shows you how the different positions played out and each one and how they worked. So you can actually see that broken out and how many units it actually traded every time it took those trades. Okay, but the one that I really like to look at is this tab here. This one's called the equity line. Now, for those of you who don't know what an equity line is, an equity line is basically how our money is played out over time. So what do I want to see in an equity line? Well, I want to see my money growing over time, right? That's kind of the end goal for all of us, I think, is what's my money doing? It's growing. So if I look at this equity line, here's my initial equity. I had 100,000 in equity to start. Now, And this down here shows me my period. So we go from 0 to 500. So this would be where I am now. So what do I see in this equity line? Well, initially I saw some drawdown. What's drawdown? Well, it's pull down of my money. It's loss of money. So we want to watch out for drawdown. And then I had a rise up, another rise up. Here I had a big rise. Now, when you see these flat periods, that's usually when we're out of the market. Okay, so we've taken a trade, like this example right here. We've taken a trade, and then we go out of the market. So that's usually what you're seeing when you're seeing those periods of flat. And then we rise up again. We pull down a little, rise up, pull down, and then we have a pretty big drawdown. We're up to about 118 here, and then we draw back down to about 112, and then we have some good runs here. It looks like we have a few different trades, and then one that kind of broke even after that. So if I look at this, this is kind of a good indication of what my money has done and how I can see the trade. Now, before I say anything about this equity line, let's actually look at one or two other equity lines. Okay, so here's our other profitable system. So this one shows recently it had a really good trade, but then it kind of went up and went down again. Okay, so it's kind of maybe that last trade's a big loser. I don't know. So let's go back and let's look at one more here. Okay, so now this equity line is actually the complete opposite of what we want to see. Okay, what we're seeing here is we're seeing here's our initial equity, and we're down below our initial equity with no recovery back up to it. So that definitely tells me that's a system I want to avoid. Okay, if I come back, let's actually do the last one right down here so we can see it. Okay, so here's a straight drawdown, straight down. So that's definitely something that we want to avoid. And what's this telling me? It's telling me that this doesn't work over time, and that's what I want to avoid. So if I was looking at this one, which stock is this? So this is price line using the MACD on shorts. Well, I probably don't want to take a short using price line on the MACD because it hasn't worked well over time. It doesn't perform. So why would I want to take that trade? Okay, so that's some indications of how we can use an equity line really quickly. But let's look at Citrix here again. And let's look at our equity line. So for the most part, if I'm looking at this equity line is a pretty good equity line because what are we seeing? We're seeing good runs up. But this concerns me here because this has been in the more recent past, this drawdown here before a good run up. So we had a good drawdown. We had a good run, so I think I'd consider that. This trade did have a good run before it pulled back, but again, I didn't have a stop there. So if I had a stop, that'd probably be a pretty good trade. So I'm thinking I would probably consider this one, but I would consider it with a very tight stop. So that's a way that you can use an equity line to help you to determine if your strategy that you're looking at does work over time. Now, the last system here, the last tab here under System actually will give you an overview of the system and how it works. So here's an example of Metastock formula language and things that you can do with Metastock formula language. We're not going to get into that, but again, realize that you can actually set that. And then this will give you your simulation options and give you that whole overview of what you selected as part of the tab. So if you come back to a report later, you can see what it was that you actually put in as part of your strategy. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the system tester. Now, if I'd wanted to do Citrix systems, I can take that back, go and open the chart, put on my expert advisor, and use it to help me manage the trade as I showed you at the beginning of the presentation. So that's one workflow that we can do. We've got time for another workflow, so let's actually spend a few minutes and show you another workflow and another product that we have. So what we're actually going to do here, let's actually talk about it before we do a full workflow. What we're going to do is actually go into this tool we call the forecaster. So if you haven't used the forecaster before, what it is it's a tool that helps you understand the direction of price after a technical setup. So let's say, for example, you were looking at we were looking at Priceline, I think was one of our examples, or Citrix systems. So what does price tend to do after you have that entry or exit signal? And that's what the forecaster can help us do. It helps us understand the direction of price after we have a technical setup. So in this example right here, I'm looking at the .SPX, or the S&P 500 index. And what this does down here is it looks at different technical signals. So right now it's looking at a MACD negative divergence. So let's just zoom in here a little bit. So these arrows right here are not buy and sell arrows. Okay, this is not like the expert advisor. It's not telling me to buy and sell here. This is telling me every time that a MACD negative divergence has happened on a chart. Okay, so now I'm understanding that, okay, here I've got a MACD negative divergence. Here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one. So don't look at these as buy and sell signals. Okay, so what it does is it looks at each one of these and says, okay, well, right here, where did price go after that event? It went up. What about this one? Did it go up? What about this one? Did it go up? And then it analyzes those and runs statistical analysis on those, and then gives us what's called a forecast cloud. So this forecast cloud helps us understand what price does after that event happens. So we're still looking at the MACD negative divergence here, but we're looking at it and saying, okay, from this event right here on December 30th, where does price tend to go after that happens? So what we see down here is we see the number of days after that event happens. So here we have 7, 14, 30, 60, or 90 days. And then we have percent movement. Okay, so we have 2% up, 4%, 6, down, 2, 4, 6. Okay, and then the colors here are represented by this probability scale. So the probability scale over here, you can see that, excuse me, the highest color is yellow, which is upward in that top range. Then we go down into orange, red, pinks, blues. So as we decrease, we lose a strength of probability. So what I'm going to look at here is where my probability map is lining up. So from the event, we can see that prices actually tend to pull down about 0.5% in that first few days after this event happens. So if I had a MACD negative divergence sell signal on my chart, I could come in and look at this and say, okay, well, I know price tends to pull down about 0.5%. And then really what it tends to do is during this first few days, it tends to pull down before pulling back up. So if I'm looking at, depending on what time frame you're looking at, you can say, well, if I'm looking at 30 days out, well, where does price tend to go? It'll tend to pull down before pulling up toward that 2% range over the first 30 days. So if I'm trading, I know a couple of things. One, I know my trade expectancy. I know how much of profit I'm looking to pull out of it. I know how long it's probably going to take it to get there. So I could say, well, if I'm setting my trade expectancy and what I expect to get out of this trade, I'm going to look at 30 days to get my maximum profit, because after that, it tends to stay flat after that. So I know I'm probably going to be in this trade around 30 days. I'm looking at an upper target of 2% up, and I'm also looking at a target of 2% down as a probable stop in that high probability range. So suddenly I've set my stop, I've set my target, and I know how long I'm probably going to be in the trade. So if you're an equity trader, you're a Forex trader, you're whatever it is you're trading, you're looking at the strongest probabilities. And that's how we can use that. Now, if I look at this tab over here, I can click on any of the events historically and see how they've done. So if I were to click on the most current event, it will zoom in and it's going to show me what it's doing right now. Now, right now, the market's definitely very bearish. Okay, so the market is rallying down. So where's it at in its probability range? Well, it's actually at the bottom of its probability range, and it's just kind of gone out of it. So that tells me a couple different things. One is if it's moving out of its probability range and it breaks down, odds are we're probably going to see a continuation of a breakdown. But we may also see a pullback up into the probabilities, because that's where we tend to see price go after these events happen. So we may see that reversal up. So if you had been in a trade, if you had gotten into this trade initially, you'd probably stop out because it's at the bottom of that probability range. And that's the way to use this, is using it to help you protect your profits and your money. Okay, so if that pulls down to the probability range, we'll want to use that as a guide in our trade. Let's look at maybe one historically. Okay, so let's say this one right here. So I can see here that it followed in that high probability range before breaking down. And once it broke out, it continued that downward trend. And that's what we'd want to watch out for out of that most current event. Okay, so the differences here between these two different clouds. So we have the cloud on this chart. Now the cloud on this chart is only looking from the event back. So if you see this, it's not using any of this current data. It's only using the backwards data. If I'm looking at this tab, it's actually using this data back, but also adding in this data so we can get a clearer picture of what's happening right now. Because if I'm managing a trade, I do want that current data to be part of what I'm looking at. Okay, so that's a way that you can use that. Now you'll also get a statistical report down here that will show up. You can go to the events date, you can do the statistical report, and this will show you how often those events occur, what you want to see as a statistical probability. So 7 days after the event occurs with a probability of 95%, the closing price appears to be about 0.15% higher with a standard deviation with a statistical margin of error about 14%. Okay, so it helps give you a clear picture of what you're seeing in there. So you can use the statistical report as part of your guidance. Then if you want to as well, you can also narrow down the cloud focus. So if you only want to see 30 days, you can use that as a little more clear view as well. So let's use a workflow here. So one thing that you can do is if you are looking at Citrix systems as we were before with the system tester, let's pull this up. So we can go and pull up Citrix in the forecaster, and we can see what the MACD sell signal says as part of our analysis. So I know it works pretty well, but what does price tend to do after that? So let's look for our MACD cross down, and let's look at our forecast cloud. Okay, so here's what price tends to do after that event. So we'll see it kind of stay right within this 5% range up down. So it tends to stay right in this trading channel right after that event. So that could make it a little bit harder to trade because we're really within a trading channel and not really breaking out. It's staying right within this flat percent range, and we can see it doesn't really do its main breakout until about 90 days after the event. So you can use this tool as an extra confirmation of what you just saw in the system tester. If you're hesitant about a trade, we'll use this to help you manage your trade and become more confident in it. Because that's really what we're trying to do with the tools in Metastock, is help take the emotions out of the trade to help you identify the best trades and be more successful. Okay, so again, we can come back here, we can click on any of the clouds and see what it's showing on the cloud. Okay, so let's show you a different workflow that you can do where you don't have to use the system tester if you want to skip the system tester and just use the forecaster. There's actually quite a number of scans that we've built in around just the events that are built into the forecaster. So what you can do is come in here and choose any of the different events. Let's just take one here as an example. Let's say a 52-week low. Let's see if we can find any stocks at a 52-week low. We'll do the NASDAQ 100 again as our scan. And we'll just have it quickly look through that list and identify if there are any stocks at their 52-week low in the NASDAQ 100. Okay, so we have our report there, and we do actually have one that it's at its 52-week low. So what we can do here is just open that chart, pull it open, and then what we can do is right-click and just from here go to the forecaster rather than doing it from the Power Console. So if you have a chart open, right-click, go to forecaster. Okay, and we're going to see that 52-week low pop up right there. Now we can see here there aren't a lot of events or times that that's happened. So it will do that analysis. If it doesn't have enough events, it'll tell you. But for it will actually give us a cloud. And actually here's a really interesting looking cloud based off of that 52-week low and what price tends to do. So after it hits a 52-week low, price tends to reverse up for about 60 days before pulling back down to a low. So if you're looking at this, you can say, well, price tends to pull up on this stock quite a bit. We actually have a pretty good range on this one going up at the upper end in the high probability up to about 7.5%. So if you're using this as an indication of a trade, man, that's a good one to look for, because that gives us a high expectancy of 7.5% over a period. We know how long it usually takes to get there. We know our time, and we know our movement. So as a trader, we really understand that this is really going to help us move and understand our trades as it goes through. So you can really see the power of that as it's moving through. So this is, again, we can click on this one and it'll show us our current cloud on the chart. So as a probability, we're probably going to see a reversal before a pull down. So you'll see that accumulated on the chart. It really gives you a clear pattern of that. We can also click on any of the past events to help us see how those are performed. Now the past events are going to look different because each one is taking into account different amounts of data. Okay, so we can't really go back too far. But we can see with this one, it's really given a lot of relevance to the movement of the price. So we're going to see that good movement here. So this would be an interesting one to watch as it progresses and see if that's something that we do want to trade and watch for that reversal. So if we start to see that reversal, it'd probably be a good indication to move into that trade as part of our setup. Okay, so that's a few of the different workflows that you can do in Metastock. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different trading strategies in Metastock. There's a lot of different ways to do things. So what we try to do for people as they're using Metastock, or if you have Metastock, some of the things that you can do, and I'll just show you quickly some of the resources that are available to our traders. So here on Metastock.com, if you click on the support tab and come down here at the bottom, you'll see this online training section under Metastock. So what you get here is you actually get a great video library of how to do just about everything that you want to do in Metastock. This will show you how to identify, how to open charts, how to work the Explorer, how to run a system test, how to use the forecaster, and I'll take you through a systematic overview of how to use these different tools. Now, that's good, but what you also need is you also need a view of how to systematically find trades. So we've also got another training under this training materials. We have this called Unleash the Power of Metastock. And Unleash the Power of Metastock is more of a way of identifying trades. So it gives you it's a manual that you can either get a hard copy of or a PDF, and that you can also get videos showing you how to do all these things. And actually this is something I put together for people to help them identify trading opportunities. Okay, so I covered a few of these workflows today, and I go into more detail with these, is how to filter and backtest like we did today, how to filter and forecast like we did today, an overview of the Metastock forecaster. So I'll actually show you how to do more with backtesting, how to do more with the forecaster, how to use different trading strategies like the RMO, how to trade with different strategies. So you'll get a lot more out of this. Now, this is something we normally charge $100 for, but if you're getting started with Metastock, you're new to Metastock, what we'll do is we'll actually give this to you free as part of your purchase or trial of Metastock. So you can actually get going and get using Metastock and understanding how it works. And again, that's a systematic way to understand it. So that's a great resource that will give you to get started with Metastock. Or if you upgrade to the latest version of Metastock and you need to understand how to do things within Metastock, this Unleash the Power of Metastock will help you do that. So what I would encourage you to do is we have a great sales team here at Metastock that's very knowledgeable that you can come in and you can contact about how to get set up with Metastock and how to use it. So you can call us at our general sales number here. It's 1-800-882-3040. Or if you're international, here's an international number, 801-506-0900. You can also chat with us by going to metastock.com/sales chat, or just click on any of the sales chat buttons here on metastock.com. And what they can do is they can talk to you about how you're trading, what you're doing, and how you can use Metastock to best fit what you're trying to accomplish. So whether you're new to Metastock or whether you're a longtime user looking to upgrade, or if you just need some help, contact us and we're here to help you get going in the best way possible. So I hope you found this presentation informative, that it's been useful to you. I've sent you all an email and I'll send you all a recording of this presentation so you can go through it again If you do have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'm happy to answer any questions, or again, anybody on our sales staff is happy to help you with any of the questions, or our support staff. So thank you very much for attending the presentation. I'll stick around for a few minutes and answer any questions if you do want to put them in the chat box. But again, thank you everybody for your time and your interest in Metastock. And if you are a Metastock customer, thank you for being one of our customers. We appreciate you very much. So again, I'll stay here for a minute and answer any questions that you may have. Well, you're welcome. I appreciate the feedback. And if you do have any feedback on what you'd like to see in future webinars, you're welcome to email me. Let me give you my email address here. It's kelly.clement@metastock.com. There's my email right there. You're welcome to send me an email. I'd love to get any feedback or ideas for future webinars that you'd like to see here at Metastock as well. Okay, well, it doesn't look like we have any questions coming in. So again, if you do have any questions, feel free to email me or contact anybody on our staff, and we're happy to help you out. But again, I thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure having you here and showing you Metastock.